Hi, this is David Williams. I'm hanging out this morning with Stan Phelps. Good morning, Stan.
Hey, great to be here, David.
Yeah, it's good to have you. What I want to do is like I start out these interviews, just giving you a moment to give me a brief introduction, who you are, what you do. Then at the end, you can talk even more detailed about your books and your speaking and give us websites and all that kind of stuff. But briefly let the audience know who you are, and then we'll dive into a conversation.
Sure. So I am a full-time author and speaker. I live in Cary, North Carolina. My office is here in the Research Triangle Park at a place called The Frontier. And my work is a Forbes contributor, TEDx speaker, IBM futurist, is really about looking at the future of both the customer experience and employee engagement.
So what I'm doing is, like I do on a lot of these, is I take notes along the way because that's how I come up with the title. So you said a couple of key things about the customer experience and employee engagement, and so that's as good of a starting point I think as any. So what I'd like for you to do is just chat for a moment, basing it off of those couple of things you just mentioned. And then based on some notes that I may jot down, I may come back and say, well, can you expand on that a little bit? So talk about customer experience and employee engagement for a moment.
Yeah, so my career before I started this journey as an author and a speaker, David, I worked for 2 decades in marketing, both on the agency side. I started with an agency called IMG, and then I spent about a decade on the brand side with adidas and the PGA of America. And then I went back to working for an agency called Synergy, where I was the number two. And all of my focus, because I'm a marketing guy, was pretty much just focusing on getting the prospect into the funnel. And what I saw was that so much of marketing was about the customer that you wanted, and very little of marketing was about taking care of the customer that you had. And so it really, I had this moment of truth, but it led me to go on this journey of really looking at companies that got it at least as much about the customer and doing the little things to reinforce the value and to make it easier for those customers to do business with them. As they did as much about that as they did about getting the new customers or prospects into the funnel. And really quickly, it led to my first book, which is called The Purple Goldfish, which was based on crowdsourcing over 1,000 examples. People would send me examples of companies that did little things. And it was a total eye-opener for me, David, because the companies that really got it for the customer, what was amazing is that they put more of an emphasis on their own employees than they did on the customers. And that was just simply a realization that, you can't have happy customers unless you have happy, engaged employees. And so that led to my second book. I'm about to come out with the 10th color in the series, and there's now like 15 books, but this is a journey that started about 10 years ago.
So you mentioned Purple Goldfish, and I know that really, like you said, is a foundation that got updated last year in 2019. And talk about the goldfish concept, because although I've known you for years, I've never really engaged you in a conversation about where did goldfish come from. Obviously, I got things I can think in my head, jumping
Right,
out of the bowl like you see the
right.
goldfish do. But tell me what kind of sparked that, and talk about the whole goldfish concept for a moment.
Yeah. And so this is the baby. This is my original baby, the Purple Goldfish. We just did the 2.0 version last August. But the goldfish is really a metaphor for growth and the importance of differentiation. And it's personal to me, David, because my very first pet, guess what?
That was a goldfish.
Was a goldfish. And I was 6 years old. Everybody should remember when they got their very own first pet, right?
Right.
So I'll never forget it. The average goldfish is the size of your thumb, about 3 inches. And that's what average. Some grow to be just 1.5 or 2 inches, and some grow to be bigger. Well, I come to find out in my research that the world's largest goldfish is nearly 20 inches. Think about that for a second. That would be like, how tall are you? Almost
Right at
6
6
foot?
feet. Yeah.
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 So it would be like you walking out of your house this morning, right? And bumping into somebody who's 3 stories tall, right? 5 times your size, 6 times your size.
Wow.
And so that caused me to think, well, why do some goldfish grow to be bigger, and why are some, average? And by the way, 20 inches is the size of an average domesticated house cat, right? And that's regular. So it turns out, and I'll do it real quick, there's 5 reasons why a goldfish grows. But here's the thing. Those same 5 reasons apply to you, David. They apply to my business, and applies to everyone who's listening right now. So really quick, the first reason is, and most of people know this about a goldfish, right? Their growth is determined by the size of the bowl or the pond that they're in. And it's a direct correlation. The bigger the bowl, the bigger the pond, the more they grow. So what's that if you're in business? It's the market that you serve, right? If you serve just the North Carolina or just the triangle, right? You probably can only grow to be so big. But if you did the entire East Coast, if you were national, you get the picture.
Right.
The second one is dead simple. Their growth is also impacted by the amount of other goldfish in the bowl or the pond. Duh, who are the other goldfish? Your competition, right?
Right.
And this one's an inverse, right? The less competition you have, the easier it is to grow. The third one is relevant to, I would say, kind of where we're at right now. Their growth is also impacted by the quality of their surrounding. So think about the nutrients in the water, the cloudiness of the water. And this one's kind of a macro thing, right? That surrounding. In business, that's simply the economy. It could be people's willingness to purchase. It could be things like tariffs. It could be a global pandemic, right? Number 4 is, for a goldfish, is how they do in their first 4 months of life. So they're tiny goldfish are tiny when they're born. In fact, their name as a baby is called a fry. That's where small fry comes from. They're about the size of a top of a pin. So how they get out of the gate is absolutely key. And so in business, what do you call your first 4 months in business? You're a startup.
Yeah,
right?
that's what I was getting at. Yep, a startup.
So how you, and it relates in business, right? How you get out of the gate in those first critical 4 months will be a factor of how big you ultimately get. Or if you launch a new product or service, right? How it does in the first 120 days will be. So I know I've thrown a lot at you. We had the size of the bowl. We had the amount of other goldfish. We had the quality of the water. And we had the first 120 days. The fifth one, and it's the most important, is genetic makeup. So what is that goldfish born with that separates it from all of the other goldfish? And it makes sense. The stronger their genes are, and the more that they're separated, the bigger they typically get. If their genes are weak and they're like everyone else, the less they typically grow. So what's genetic makeup if you're in business? It's simply differentiation, right? How do you stand out in what I would call a sea of sameness? And here's the thing, I'm going to assume most people listening to this have already been in business for 4 months. So of the remaining 4 things, what do you have control over? Does anyone have control over the market? How about your competition? No, not unless you're buying them. And no
Right.
one listening to this right now, as much as they'd like to think that they do, has control over the economy. The only thing you have control over is how you differentiate what you do, and I would argue how you do it and why you do it. And that's the key metaphor for the goldfish, is how can you do the little things that drive that differentiation that gives your customers a reason to be able to tell other people about that difference. Really quickly, the colors, actually the first 3 colors in the series were purple, green, and gold. And that was a reference to Mardi Gras.
Okay.
They're the 3 official colors of Mardi Gras. And the reason being is that the entire concept I write about is based on a word that comes from New Orleans. And it's a Creole word that's called lagniappe. Have you heard of lagniappe before,
I
David?
have not.
So it's not many people have. It's French and Spanish, Creole. It literally means the gift or to give more. And it's the idea that if you're down, it originated in the 1800s in New Orleans. In fact, Mark Twain, I love this, in his autobiography, said lagniappe was a word worth traveling all the way to New Orleans to get. And it's the idea that if you do business, like say for example, you go and you buy a dozen beignets, they would give you the 13th as a little something extra. Or maybe you're on Bourbon Street and you buy 4 or 5 rounds. Maybe the bartender buys you back a round. And it's the idea that as the business, instead of just doing the transaction, the business does a little something extra to honor the relationship. A little something that's added. Now, it could be something of value, or it could just be something that you do to make it easier for that customer to do business with you. And so it boils down to what I call value and maintenance.
Yeah, a lot of you shared a ton of good information. I'm glad you broke it down like that, and getting to that 5th one of what we have control of years ago. And I'm sure you remember this terminology is not popular anymore, but unique selling proposition, right?
USP, yeah.
Yeah, USP was like the popular one years ago, which kind of shows I've been around at this for a while as well. But like you said, that differentiation and just the little things of adapting and doing things and trying to be different, because you're exactly right. Sometimes it's little simple things. I think all of us, this day and time with the technology revolution, the ease of doing business, if you can't easily do some business with somebody in this day and time, something's wrong, and we're likely going to do business with the ones. I mean, I got to admit it. I mean, Amazon, obviously, it's just so easy. Hit my phone, hit it, click, Prime member, boom, and it's just
right.
They make it so easy. Amazon's not the cure-all for everything, but there are a lot of things that make it easy.
But Amazon, Netflix, those companies have raised the bar.
Oh yeah.
In fact, one of my books is all about technology, and there's a guy local here in the Triangle. His name is Scott Wingo. He founded Channel Advisor, and now is working with Spiffy. But anyway, he calls it the Amazon effect. Because here's the thing: when you do business with somebody, they're not just comparing it to what it's like to do business with your competitor. They're comparing it to what it was like, to your point of the last time I bought something on Amazon.
Right.
So the bar is dramatically raised.
And that's a good point about Netflix. So you've got those companies out there like Amazon and Netflix. And so obviously these companies raise the bar. And even for a small business like mine, like you said, people still have that analogy of, okay, I just bought something on Amazon the other day. It was so easy. Why does this guy make everything so complicated? So I think that differentiation, you've got me thinking again, and there's some things I've done here recently that I like to think are a little different. Some stuff I've shared and I've used for example, one of the things that I did recently is I did and this is going to probably blow your mind at the number of them, 80 videos in one morning with the individual's name that said, "Hi, Stan. It's David Williams, RTP Photo and Video. Want to thank you for your business." And then just a short message. It was like 10 seconds long, but I just recorded, boom. And then I just kept going. And then I sent that by email and it was a personalized message. So it wasn't just, "Hi, I thank you for your business." It's, "Hi,
Right.
Stan." And so that was something that I came up with to try doing. And it led to other things, right? Which is what sometimes when we start saying, how can I be different? Then it starts making us start thinking, right? I'm
Yeah.
sure, and you start, okay, this was good, but now like, what can I do even beyond this? So I appreciate you sharing all this information with me. Since you really nailed it so well, rather than you do like I do with some of my guests and say, okay, Stan, bring us home and summarize it, because I think you got a lot of stuff in here. I'm going to throw you a curveball.
Yeah, hit me.
So I'm gonna close yours out quite a bit different, and then once we talk about this, then I'll open it up to share your website, share your social media.
Yeah, sure.
But bar tricks, bad jokes, and even worse stories. So that's from one of your LinkedIn videos, because one of the things you've been doing recently, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't seen, and feel free to look at it while I'm
Right.
chatting.
Yeah, no problem. I'm going to see if I can find it.
But one of the things that I've seen recently for you that I haven't noticed is you're posting a lot of videos from your desk.
Right.
Now, I may have missed that. Maybe you've been doing that for years, but recently on my LinkedIn feed, I've been seeing you pop up quite a bit with these videos from your desk. One of the things that's interesting is there's a consistency, like this background behind me. People comment on it. Somebody thought it was my backyard the other day. It's a $20 background off of Amazon,
Right.
but at least I've kind of got some consistency with it. So you're kind of sitting there with the big screen at your desk. And that's showing up regular on my LinkedIn feed. And I think the most recent one that you posted was the book right there. And so I figured we'd share it, close out with something kind of comical. So if you want to share a story or a little bit about that book before I open it up to share how to reach you, go ahead and do something that I don't think I've done with any guests to this point.
Sure.
And let's have a little fun with it.
Sure. So I've written 15, about to come out with the 15th book. The one I'm most proud of and how it started for me back when I was 22. And they say, whoever they are, David, that wherever you are in your life when you're 22, they say is the most impactful time in your life. And it probably makes sense, right? You've probably fully formed who you are, who you're around, and what you're doing has a huge impact on your life. And so when I was 22, I was living in London, and I shared an apartment with a guy who ended up co-writing this book with. But a funny thing is, we started a process of collecting these they're almost like postcards that you would see in the phone booths in London. And it was pre-internet days. And it was pretty funny because I was a marketing guy. It was for like escorts and call girls would advertise their services, but you couldn't obviously make any veiled references because that would be like solicitation, right? So they all had to be very creative in how they would, like, for example, one would say like French lessons and like a phone number, or large chest for sale, So anyway, that started the collection process. It's also when I was in London, I started to learn some bar tricks from going to the different pubs. And so I used to live then, fast forward about 7 years, I lived in New York City, and my flatmate in London was now running a bar restaurant. And we decided it would be a fun idea to collect stories and tricks and different riddles and jokes. So yeah, so it was a passion project, and then 3 years ago, I finally published it.
That's so. I appreciate you sharing that story. That definitely probably threw our listeners for a loop, because we we haven't closed with anything like that just yet. So I appreciate you sharing the story about that. And one of the things you said, 22. So for me, I got married at 22.
Oh, there you go.
So that was, I mean, some people get married young like that. Some people are much older. But so when you obviously 22. When everybody that's 22 or older heard that, right, that probably brought something to their mind. What did I do? You know, college graduation may have happened at 22, or I lived in London, like your case. In my case, I got married. So, you know, things like that. It's interesting how ages, specific ages, can make you think. Like I had a lady on the other day, and I'll wrap up in just a moment, that her whole concept is your 10-year-old self. So,
interesting.
Yeah, she's a speaker. And so that's
Who's
kind
that,
of her,
David?
Krista Moore.
Oh yeah, I know Krista. Yeah.
So Krista Moore, a lot of what she talked about in there is your 10-year-old self. And it got me to kind of having a conversation with her, you know, about my 10-year-old self. And as the conversation continued on, I first started out, well, Krista, you know, as a boy versus a girl, because she sounded very organized at 10 years old. And I'm like, I don't think I was that organized, but it did get me to thinking about other things as the conversation continued on. So my point is, 22 got me thinking about it. The 10-year-old self got me thinking, but I appreciate you joining me today. What I'd like for you to do is I'm giving you permission here as we close this out, you've given back through this, and I know your goal. I know you well enough. I know the people, you know, we know some of the same people. I know your goal is not to sell Stan Phelps, and you know, I realize that this is giving back to the community. That's part of what this is for, you know, to be able to give back. Hopefully some people will have some takeaways and say, okay, what's a couple of things I can implement? Maybe they will buy the book Purple Goldfish. But with that said, I want you to feel comfortable just saying, here's who I am, here's what I do, here's how to reach me. So I'm going to let you close out with that before we say our final goodbyes.
Yeah, sure. So Stan Phelps, author and speaker, you know, really trying to help companies take care of the customers that they have and the employees they have, so they can bring those customers and employees can bring them the customers and employees they want. I've got a couple sites. Probably the best one is stanphelpsspeaks.com. And lastly, I'm going to reinforce something that you said earlier, just as a tip for people to think about, is how do you follow up and just touch base, whether it's creating a 10-second video and a short email, but how do you go back and just touch base and be of service to the clients that you already have, especially when we're all in a difficult time that we're at right now?
Yeah, I know that, and I'm sure you get repeat as well. And I've got clients that I've worked with for years, and I love the clients that I get to work with for years. And so it's kind of a constant reminder that, you know, I need to be taking care of clients, because a lot of times, you know, they are the lifeblood, right? They keep coming back over and over and over. I'm sure you've spoken certain situations more than once where they've had you, you know,
Yeah,
back
absolutely.
to speak again. And so I'm glad that you shared that differentiation piece. I challenge people to really think about how they can be different, because like you said, that is something that we can control. We can say, how can I be different than the other folks out there? You gave some great advice. Stan Phelps, has been a pleasure having you, and have a fantastic day.
Really, really quick. Remember, you're unique.
Thanks, Stan.
Just like everyone else.
Take care.